lived in world capitals, signed agreements.
Now, today I want to talk to you about a lesson that we can learn from Libya. And before I do that, I want us to watch this video on YouTube.
Dealing with an individual and with a regime that will not be satisfied with the mere reimposition of its authority.
The Arab Spring reached Libya. Years of political control and stalled reforms met a generation demanding change.
It is time for Gaddafi to go. Now, without further violence or delay.
In March, 1 month after the outbreak of protests, NATO, backed by the United States, major European powers, and the broader Atlantic Alliance, began conducting airstrikes.
It was legal because we secured a resolution from the United Nations, and we have been acting in accordance with that resolution ever since.
The goals of the 17 February Revolution were clear: to end family rule and military authority and to move toward democratic governance. Libyans demanded elections, ballot boxes and basic freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of expression and freedom of opinion. Today,
Now, like Libya, before the NATO intervention, there were factions already in existence. From the number that I count, that there was about 5 or 6 different factions already in existence in Libya at that time.
Is Libya moving towards reconciliation, further fragmentation, or a new regional role in the Mediterranean? We are in Tripoli at Martyr Square, a place that carries deep symbolic meaning for Libya. 15 years after the revolution, these squares still reflect the country's hopes, its divisions, and the questions it continues to face. Over the next days, we will look behind the official statements and headlines to understand who shapes Libya's future today, what challenges remain, and why this country still matters for the region and beyond. On the Mediterranean coastline, facing Europe and opening toward Africa, Libya remains a crossroads of energy, trade, and influence. But strategic geography interacts with fragmented governance. In Tripoli, the government of national unity, led by Prime Minister Abdul Hamid al-Dibeiba since 2021, remains the internationally recognized authority backed by the United Nations. In Benghazi since 2014, an Eastern administration aligned with Field Marshal Khalifa Haftar and the Libyan National Army controls territory and institutions outside United Nations recognition. In the south, Fezzan's desert remains in the hands of militias and tribal structures that dominate cross-border movement.
Politically, this is the real problem. There are multiple competing projects. Former regimes are still struggling. The royal system is still trying to return to the scene. And the former regime is also attempting to re-enter the political landscape.
With Gaddafi's gone, Libya's centralized state collapsed. In that vacuum, extremist groups, including ISIS, seized the opportunity to move in and plant local structures.
At that time, the city was besieged from 3 sides. We had no access to the sea. 8 difficult months passed, truly difficult, in fighting, and that every day we lost a considerable number of martyrs, wounded, or amputees. Our ambition, our hope, and our wish was that Libya becomes a democratic state.
In 2011, Enver Savan emerged as a Misrata figure who supervised the coordination of revolutionary brigades and logistics. After he became a Misrata power broker, aligned against Khalifa Haftar and connected to the networks that backed Misrata's armed groups. As a senior member of Misrata Council of Elders, he criticized the government for poor governance and worsening living conditions.
We went out against Gaddafi's rule, the rule of an individual and the rule of a family. Today, Libya is ruled by family and individual, family and military. The chaos that is now in Libya and the poor living conditions and the political division and what Libya is approaching now is a geographical division. All of this goes back to the international community abandoning.
Now, what we must understand is that Libya is not a Western country and cannot be governed by a Western system. Now, what the West wanted to do is to force their own democracy into Libya, and they did it with NATO bombing. That's what we must understand.
Exile as part of the anti-Gaddafi opposition. After returning in 2011, he began consolidating armed groups and tribal alliances in eastern Libya, forming the Libyan National Army. In late 2019, Khalifa Haftar launched an offensive on Tripoli, aiming to seize the capital and end the dual government era by force.
The coming phase will be difficult and will require a strong leader. We call on all Libyans to make the right choice that will once again serve the country's interests.
Ended, and Libya moved into a fragile political phase. In early 2021, a United Nations-backed political dialogue selected Abdul Hamid al-Dibeiba, a figure rooted in the economic and infrastructure sectors, as interim prime minister to lead Libya towards elections.
The protection of Libya's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political unity, as well as the welfare of the Libyan people, is our primary objective.
In this meeting, we reaffirmed the importance of Turkey's role in implementing a permanent and sustainable ceasefire and ending the war that our country has experienced.
Libya remains one of the few countries the world still advises against visiting. And yet foreign interest has only grown, shifting from war to energy and maritime leverage. So, what has Libya become since the last major escalation in 2020?
There is foreign interest still going on while the country is being divided. That should be noted as well.
In its real everyday rhythm, not the headlines, but normal life that moves. Trucks carrying goods, people heading to work, farmers in the fields, and children on the way to school. These simple routines are what keeping the country going. And to understand this reality, you have to be here on the road, where Libya's story shares itself without leaving any explanation.
Socially speaking, we can say that Libyans' relationships over the past year or recent years, especially after the war that took place in Tripoli, have seen significant social improvement. Libyans have begun meeting again and talking to one another, moving.
Now, today I want to share with you the important lesson that we learned from Libya. When NATO intervened in 2011, the country was already divided into factions. Now, in Bougainville, we have probably two or three different factions that still exist. Now, Bougainville's case is very unique and sensitive, but one thing that I can say is that those different factions, they all support independence. And in Bougainville's case, I don't think it's the best idea to tear up those factions when we are dealing with independence issue. That should be noted because we are Melanesians. We know that we have our own ways of settling issues, and I think this is my own opinion. We should leave those factions as they are for now and deal with the issue of independence. That will remove some layers of difficulties, some layers of issues, and then we can deal with those issues later on. For now, let's concentrate on building a nation on the independence issue, and after the government that will be established after the independence happens, after that government builds its own institutions, its own economy, there will come a time where we will deal with those issues. Now, there was the Gaddafi government and its royal loyal forces. There was the National Transitional Council, which represented the main opposition to the Gaddafi government. It was supported by the Western influence. Western hand was involved in Libya. There were also local revolutionary groups, city-based militias, tribal groups, and Islamist armed groups. Many of those groups supported NATO's intervention because they wanted Gaddafi removed. They wanted their main enemy to be removed. That's all. They didn't look at the future of Libya. They only wanted their side to win, and they could have the power to control the country, the resources, mainly the oil. Many of these groups supported NATO intervention because they wanted to remove Gaddafi. And yes, NATO bombing helped weaken Gaddafi forces. But after the bombing stopped, what we are concerned about is after the dust settles, what happens? There are people who live their life. There are people who need to meet their requirements to live their daily lives. That's the very important thing. The country did not have strong national institutions ready to take over. The rebel groups did not fully unite into one national army. Many militias kept their weapons. Different groups began competing for power, territory, oil, and political control. That's one very difficult situation that happened in Libya. Instead of becoming a stable democracy, Libya became divided between rival governments, rival armed groups, and foreign backed factions. Now, most of these foreign influence, foreign policy is to tap into those warring parties and take advantage of one side to mainly to promote their own ideologies. And the main thing they want is to get hold of the resources in those countries. So Libya became divided between those rival governments, armed groups, and foreign-backed factions. So the question is Libya better today than it was before the intervention? The answer is not really simple. Under Gaddafi, Libya was not a free country according to some Western analysts, because they viewed it in their own way. What I said earlier in the beginning is that Libyans are not Westerners. Libyans are not Europeans, and their culture is different altogether from the Western culture. So you can't just go and force your own idea of democracy on them. They have their own way of governing themselves. But after the intervention, Libya lost national stability. Many Libyans now face insecurity, weak services, political division, armed groups, corruption, and economic uncertainty. So Libya teaches us one very important lesson. Removing an old system does not automatically create a better country. A better country must be built through strong institutions, national unity, law and order, good leadership, and a clear economic plan. This is where Bougainville must pay attention. As Bougainville looks forward to becoming a new nation, we must not only focus on independence as a political goal. We must also focus on building a capable state. We need strong public service systems. We need a strong, trusted police and justice system. We need transparent resource laws. We need proper management of land, mining, fisheries, agriculture, and government revenue. We need to make sure that no political faction, armed groups, clan, or region becomes stronger than the state itself. That is very important. Bougainville must also avoid depending only on mining. Libya depended heavily on oil, and that resource became a source of conflict. Now, in Bougainville, mining, as we all know, has created conflicts. Okay? During explorations, we know that people have died because of they are going into people's territory. So mining is a very sensitive issue in Bougainville. Libya depended only on oil, and that was the source of conflict. Revenue from oil, revenue from gold, copper, fisheries, and other finite resources should be used to build farms, factories, roads, schools, hospitals, digital systems, and industries that create long-term jobs for the people. In Bougainville, we have agriculture, which can be combined with some research and local production, which must be at the center of our development. The lesson from Libya is clear. Independence is not just a flag. It is not just borders. It is not just political power. Independence must mean building a nation that can serve its people, a nation that protects its citizens, a nation that manages its resources fairly, a nation that creates jobs, a nation that unites its people, and a nation that is strong enough to stand on its own. Bougainville must learn from Libya. We must prepare before we become independent. We must build our institutions before we take full control. We must put unity before politics. We must put the people before personal interest. And we must make sure that the future nation of Bougainville is built on peace, discipline, transparency, and development. That is the lesson. Freedom must be followed by nation building. Without strong nation building, independence can become unstable. But with unity, planning, and honest leadership, Bougainville can avoid the mistakes of Libya and build a better future for its people. So, with that, I want to I want people to comment, and if you have constructive ideas or if you have negative or positive ideas, it has to be constructive so that we come up with new knowledge or new idea, and that would be good for our future. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching.